time. We're continuing to learn the laws of de'ot, or proper behavior, in the Rambam, in the Maimonides' Yad HaChazakah, in his innovative collection of laws of proper behavior. Put them together. We've been seeing that a lot of different laws. We talked about the laws of rebuke. We spoke a little bit about it's the rebuke, how hard it is in our generation, how hard it was for generations already to rebuke someone, although it is a mitzvah in the Torah. You've got to make sure that if you do rebuke him, you don't embarrass him. Take a look at the middle of the page. We left off with whoever has the possibility of rebuking sinners and fails to do so is considered responsible for the sin. We said the people who have greater power have greater responsibility, right? With great power comes great responsibility. Somebody said that. Somebody said that. I'm thinking of a movie. I don't know. That's what it is, yeah. At first, we're going to continue from there. At first, a person who administers a colleague should not speak to him harshly until he becomes embarrassed. As the Leviticus 19 states, you should not bear a sin because of him. This is what the sages said. Should you rebuke him to the point that his face changes color, the Torah says you should not bear a sin because of him. Okay, so even though you're rebuking him, you don't want to make him embarrassed. We're on the page which is, it looks like this. The first word in the line is therefore. The first word on the page is therefore, and then we're about 2/3 of the way down. From this, we learn that it is forbidden for a person to embarrass a fellow Jew. How much more so is it forbidden to embarrass him in public? Even though a person who embarrasses a colleague is not liable for lashes on account of him, it is a great sin, right? Most sins are punishable by lashes. This one's not. It's still a great sin. Our sages said a person who embarrasses a colleague in public does not have a share in the world to come.
It's compared to murder.
Yes. It's like when his face drains, when he gets embarrassed, his face becomes white. So it's like you're draining the blood out of him. It's like killing him. So embarrassing others is prohibited from the Torah. Even when you think you're doing a mitzvah, you're rebuking him. Especially if you do it in public. What's the story told about who didn't want to embarrass someone in public? Good. Already in the Chumash, it says that Yehuda sinned with Tamar, and he thought that she was unfaithful. Tamar was his daughter-in-law who was waiting for Yibum, some type of levirate marriage. In those days, it was somehow connected to the father-in-law. And then when he finds out she's pregnant, he's going to throw her into the fire. Hotzi'uha v'tisaref. She should be put to death because she was unfaithful. In the laws of levirate marriage, she still had to wait for the third brother. And if not the third brother, maybe the uncle, maybe the father-in-law, excuse me. And so she was going to be put to death. And what does she do? She sends a message to him with the signs, with the staff and the... Right, it's not clear what it is. Chotemet v'ptilim. Ptilim means some kind of string, so it's a scarf. And chotemet is a seal. Signet ring or something like that. And she said that she had them from Yehuda. Yehuda had left them with her as a deposit, and she never gave him a chance to retrieve them. And so it's basically telling him, it's your fault. And I am barren. I have a baby from the owner of this signet ring and this type of scarf. And what does Yehuda say?
Is righteous than me.
Tzadka mimeni. she's more righteous than me, and she gets saved. So the sages learn from here. It says, all she was going to do is send the symbols. What if he would have denied it? He could have done it. Nobody would have known that. It was a secret between them that she had his signet ring. He could have made some excuse that she took it from his house. He didn't have to admit it, but she was willing just to give him the hint. And she was willing to be put to death. Why? Because she didn't want to embarrass him publicly. In the end, his name was Yehuda, the word for lehodot. Lehodot, it means to thank, it also means to admit. So he was admitting his guilt. He was quick to admit his guilt, and she was saved from here. But there's a story in the Talmud, another story. I'm trying to remember the exact story. These two people who went to hide in the furnace.
The Rabbi, the one who's giving tzedakah, and he was so embarrassed that he go to the furnace and he burned his legs. He doesn't want to show himself on the benefactor.
That's right. Somebody was giving tzedakah, and he knew that the person receiving the tzedakah would be embarrassed to see him. And so he ran away from them so that they shouldn't be embarrassed. And they had nowhere to hide except in the furnace. He hid in the furnace. It's better to be burned in a furnace than to embarrass someone else. If you embarrass someone else, you lose olam haba. Ouch. I imagine there's times I embarrass people. Sometimes we talked about it last time. Who do you embarrass usually?
Your children.
Those you're closest to. Right. If those you're closest to, usually you get very familiar and you're not so sensitive to that. What could be embarrassing to them, and especially young kids do that. They do it on purpose. They're not taught yet. They didn't learn this Rambam yet. They didn't learn. They don't know the story of Yehuda and Tamar yet. Maybe for whatever reason, kids can be very mean. Right? It's part of religious education to teach them how to treat one another. And not to embarrass somebody. Give me an example. Somebody give an example. The easiest one is try to think of sometime you were embarrassed. Don't tell me his name. But a situation in which you were embarrassed by something that someone said about you or near you. Or, if you want to do tshuva, try to think of sometimes circumstance where you embarrass someone else. Remember last class I gave you an example of a husband and wife. They were joking around about how much she's eating because she's pregnant, and the facts were there. She was eating a lot. She was pregnant, but it was still embarrassing for her to talk about it in public with the other couple. That ruined their relationship. But I'll give you an example. Yeah.
I used to call them nicknames of my friends. Back in university.
Yeah. Talmud's very strict about nicknames. It's very common nowadays to have nicknames. Sometimes people don't like them, even though they get used to them, so they don't have a choice. All of the society calls them that. I have, it's not quite a nickname, but there's two people in the world, they shall remain nameless, who still, even though my name has not been Michael for a very long time, I'm called Menachem. Ever since I made Aliyah, I chose to use my Hebrew name. My mother always called me Menachem, but when I lived in Toronto, my name was Michael. That's easier for most people. For the non-Jews, it's easier to say Michael than it is Menachem. It's a well-known name. Anyways, I grew up as Michael. But most people made the switch when I made the switch. It's respectful. And so there's two people that still till today they call me Mikey. Never liked Mikey. Nothing wrong with Mikey, but I don't know. As I got older, it felt like that's like babyish, Mikey. Right? And then there's the famous commercial. In what was it for? Mikey, he likes it. What was it for? What food? The cereal, exactly. So, anyways, it was not. It was a little embarrassing.
Your brother and sister?
I'm not going to say who it was. I'm not going to say who it was. What are you trying to make me say bad things about other people? They could be listening. They know who they are, but no, they're getting better at it. But so yeah, calling people names that they don't like is embarrassing. Yeah. What else? Another example. Yeah.
Making a joke on someone's behalf.
Yeah. At someone's expense, you mean? Yeah. Yeah. We do that a lot. Mitkabed biklon chavero. There's even an expression in the sages that that's you garner honor for yourself through embarrassing someone else. You manage, we're going to go on a teal now. So you're going to manage to, I don't know, jump over the riverbed or to scale the mountain or whatever it is. And the guy behind you, he falls on the way. Look at him, he fell. It's terrible. That's an example of gaining honor out of somebody else's. That's why you're not coming, huh? You're scared. It's true. It's a dangerous thing when you have a social interaction. You have to be careful to show each other respect. Yes?
What if the other person's laughing too and they laugh first?
Sure they laugh. Of course they laugh. They have to cover themselves. What are they going to do? Just, oh yeah, I meant to do that. Really, it could be. There's someone who's very easygoing, but more often than not, they're laughing at themselves to cover.
But then you actually become a very serious person. You can't laugh at anything.
I don't think so. I think I understand what you're saying. And the truth is, some people, they learn more, the laws of Lashon Hara, for example, and they say, well, now I'm just not going to talk. Because I'm scared to say Lashon Hara. And, there's a benefit to that, but that's not the goal. The aim is to find that middle path where you can be friendly, you can talk with people, and just train yourself that whatever comes under the rubric of Lashon Hara, I'm not going to talk. But there's many things to talk about other than talking about other people. I'm talking Lashon Hara. Same thing here. It's not the exact same thing, but same thing here. Social interaction, so you won't do any social interaction. There's plenty of joking around you can do. It doesn't have to be at the expense of somebody else. Yeah, another? Something else to say? Or,
I had a question that came up yesterday. Someone said it's very humid.
Yeah.
Is it Lashon Hara right?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah.
And he said, it's not proper to talk like that. Rather, you should say, if it's humid to me. Like, you say, to me, it's cold. To me, it's hot. Whatever. I feel warm. Yeah. It's not the land. It's not the land which is...
Interesting. It's a big chumrah. First of all, to realize that to speak bad about a land has the rules of Lashon Hara. It's not a person. So where do we learn that out, that you're not supposed to speak bad about the land of Israel?
Spies.
From the spies. The spies, they say, they spoke Lashon Hara. But they spoke about the land. They didn't speak about people. So we see that the land of Israel is so special, so treated with respect in Judaism that we're really supposed to be careful about it. I think context is everything. I always say to people that are going to Chutz La'aretz, for a vacation, visit their family, whatever it is, even if they're going for a couple of years, whatever it is, make sure people ask you about the land of Israel. Don't tell the truth. No, I'm just joking. No. But it's different. It's different when you're... we like to say that now we live here, we can complain, you get the rights to gripe and complain when you're Israeli, and if you're just a tourist, then you should always be honored. But you should always be careful about the honor of Eretz Israel. You don't have to lie and say if it's not hot, or if it's hot, or if it's too cold, you say it's so cold. But there's a sensitivity there, which is important to recognize that. Eretz Yisrael should be treated like a person. We don't just want to badmouth it for no good reason. There's a balance. It's hard to find the balance, both about Lashon Hara and about joking around. Joking around, I think you can have a lot of fun, and a lot of good times, and a lot of social interactions without it being at the expense of somebody else.
Because it might depend on your own perception. Say it's very hot in the land of Israel, and you say it positively because in your
you like it to be hot. Yes, context is very important for sure. But I don't think that's a chumrah. What I would say, I think you're allowed to complain. If you're being honest and saying it's hot, well, it's the facts. There's laws of Lashon Hara, which we're comparing it to. The laws of Lashon Hara state that if there's something which is publicly known, called apetlas, something which has already been spread, something that's on the front page of every newspaper, and you're talking about it, you're not guilty of Lashon Hara because everybody knows it already. You're not adding anything to the common discussion. So you could say the same thing. If it's boiling hot, it's boiling hot. There's nothing wrong with saying that. You're not saying anything that's news to anybody. You're just sharing how you're feeling. It's not. So there's a lot of details about the laws of Lashon Hara, which are coming up here in the Rambam very soon. So it's fascinating. Apparently, the Chazon Ish said that the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen from Radin, he turned the Agada into Halacha. What does that mean? What's Agada? What's Halacha?
History, stories into a specific law.
Right. Agada is traditions which are not legal. Halacha is legal stuff.
Yeah.
So for thousands of years, Lashon Hara was, for most part, it was directives, in general directives about proper behavior. It was Agada. Hilchot Deot, the Rambam. It's based on a pasuk, but there's no real laws. There's no real, details. Like we've been learning the laws of what you're allowed to eat on the meal before Tisha B'Av. A lot of details. Lashon Hara never had any details. We're going to see the basics come from Sukkim. It's definitely prohibited from the Torah. So the Chazon Ish wasn't claiming that he made up laws which didn't exist. But the discussion of the topic of Lashon Hara was primarily in the realms of, this is the proper thing, don't speak badly, but all the details were missing. And along came the Chafetz Chaim. He became known, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Cohen, became known by the title of his book. His book about the laws of Lashon Hara was called Chafetz Chaim, because it says in the pasuk, we said it yesterday, on Shabbat, if you said all the prayers in the morning, Mi ha'ish ha'chafetz chaim, ohev yamim lerotov, who was the one who loves life, Chafetz Chaim wants life, that's the word Chafetz Chaim means desires life. Who is the man? What does it say in Tehillim? Netzor leshoncha meira, guard your tongue from speaking evil. So he chose that to be the title of his book about the laws of speaking evil, about prohibited speech. He called it Chafetz Chaim. He became known as the Chafetz Chaim. That became his moniker, his nickname. I don't think he minded. He was happy, although he was a great Torah scholar in many areas of halacha. Didn't only write about Lashon Hara, but he really wrote an entire book. We're going to see in the Rambam 4 lines. As I said, there's 2 psukim. The Rambam has 4 halachot about it, and he made it into an entire book. Hundreds of pages. What do you mean? He made it up at a thin air? No, he pulled together and tried to refine and define precisely when Lashon Hara is allowed and what the parameters are. He listed all the commandments which you transgress if you speak Lashon Hara of this type and of that type. It's definitely a very important mitzvah to talk about. Here too, the laws of relationships. We have to turn Agada into Halacha. Again, it's not really true that we're turning Agada into Halacha. It was always Halacha, but the more we talk about it, the more we refine it, the more knowledgeable we are about it, the more sensitive we are about it. And there are many, many questions, of course. Let's continue. Therefore, a person should be careful not to embarrass a colleague, whether of greater or lesser stature, in public, not to call him a name which embarrasses him. Did you read ahead? Or to relate a matter that brings him shame in his presence. When does the above apply? In regard to matters between one man and another. However, in regard to spiritual matters, if the transgressor does not repent after being admonished in private, he may be put to shame in public, and his sin may be publicized. He may be subjected to abuse, scorn, and curses until he repents, as was the practice of all the prophets of Israel. This is really dependent on the social setting. The assumption of many of these laws is that the entire society, it's like people talk about, there's laws of coercion, that the courts are going to coerce you to keep the halakha. What is everybody afraid of? When all those religious people get more votes and they vote in the religious party, there's going to be medinat halakha. And they're going to force everybody to keep Shabbat. And they're going to force everybody to put on tefillin. This is part of the public discourse today in Israel. It's really scary because it's totally a misunderstanding of the way the halachic system works. Sure, there's coercion in halacha. Sure, there's even public shaming. But that public shaming, that coercion, is in the context where the community has made a decision. We want these halachic standards to be the norm of society. If the community didn't accept that, which should clearly be the case for however long until we get a better education system, then the halacha would never embarrass anybody. You wouldn't be using coercion. The Beit Din only coerced in the context of a society which appointed the Beit Din in order to set down the rule of law and create a society that the majority at least, wants. So until we have it's of course, absolutely, the basis of democracy being that we follow the majority is a basic law in the Torah. We spoke about it in a different class. All right, so of course this is something the prophets could do. Embarrass somebody publicly and call someone out for in the modern society, it's very hard to make that call. If you're a rabbi, a teacher, some teachers do that. It's a very dangerous business. Sometimes you make an example of a kid in the class, right? We have a teacher here. And so that everybody else doesn't get the wrong idea and start walking all over you as a teacher, right? So you have to make an example. Very, very dangerous. He could be embarrassed. Some teachers are guilty of being overbearing, and sometimes the kid is damaged for life when he gets embarrassed.
Why don't you teach that? No kids.
It even applies to adults. You can embarrass adults. Just because you're an adult doesn't mean you can't get embarrassed. Interesting. Very hard to... But publicizing the sins, the Chafetz Chaim, who I just mentioned earlier about the laws of Lashon Hara, he also has at the back of the book, Shmirat Lashon, he has some insights from a teacher of his. And there he writes that he believes these laws of you're allowed to hate somebody who's a sinner, you're supposed to scorn somebody who's a sinner, you're supposed to curse him until he repents. He connects that law with what we said just a few laws above. And that is, first you have to rebuke him. So he said, all the people that are not keeping Shabbat today, can you go and throw stones at them? Can you go and treat them as sinners? He says, well, have you rebuked them first? Wait, but what did we learn about rebuke? Is that it's so hard to fulfill the mitzvah of rebuke nowadays. If you're not able to rebuke someone, so you can't move ahead to the next step and curse them out or treat them or hate them even. So it's on the books, this idea that someone who has a sinner should be castigated and should be held responsible for his sins. But there is also, of course, the danger is that we can't get there. Technically, it's a dead letter, essentially, because we're not in a position to be able to rebuke others in this generation because we don't know how to do it properly, because they don't know how to accept it properly, as we discussed in the previous class. Okay, let's go on one more. Is pious behavior... David, you want to read for us, please? David, yeah?
Yeah.
It is pious behavior?
It is pious behavior if a person who was wronged by a colleague would rather not admonish him or mention the matter at all because the person who wronged him was very boorish or because he was mentally disturbed, provided he forgives him totally without bearing any feelings of hate or admonishing him. The Torah is concerned only with those who carry feelings of hate.
So stop there. So this is all started, this was the conclusion of the laws of hating. Go back to where did it start? Same page, just from the top of the page, the fourth section. Whoever hates a fellow Jew in his heart transgresses a Torah prohibition. As Leviticus 19:17 states, do not hate your brother in your heart. So we had about 10 laws. 10 laws regarding hating. The last one is, you're playing with fire. What did the Rambam say? Why do you have to admonish someone? Because if you don't admonish him, it'll fester. The hatred of him will just get worse and worse. And the way to get it out in the open, the way to stop hating him is by talking to him. Start a dialogue. Say to him, why did what you did hurt me, it wronged me. It'll give the other person to explain himself, why he did it, he didn't mean it, he can apologize, you can have a conversation, and then you won't be hating him anymore. But if you just keep it all inside, you'll be guilty of hating him. Here he's suggesting another solution. Maybe you are so easygoing, or you're so forgiving, or you just feel that this person, what he said about me, I don't hate him because he embarrassed me, but there's nobody to talk to there. So maybe you don't have to go and rebuke him. He said, you can do that. But the key point is, you have to make sure that you don't have any hatred in your heart. Because that's the reason for going to, the Torah says you have to go admonish him. It's to foster, or to make sure that there's no fostering of hate, you have to have that dialogue. But if you're someone who you feel you'd rather not have dialogue with, says you can do that as long as you don't have any feelings of hate. It's a very fine point. You have to know yourself very well to know whether or not you're just pushing it down, it's in there, but you're just ignoring it because, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to fight, I don't want to have a discussion, I'll just move on. We many times push it aside and move on, but in our heart, we're really still angry at the person. Now, it's true in general. It's even more dangerous when it comes to a couple and friends. Sometimes you want to move on, but really you should work it out. Yes?
Are we allowed to say Lashon Hara about a wicked person?
Yeah, that's connects to what I was saying before. Yes, the rules of you're allowed to hate a wicked person, and you're allowed to say Lashon Hara against the wicked person. That's where the Chafetz Chaim brings in that end of the book this tradition from his teacher, who says that if you haven't been through the stages, you can't apply that law of speaking Lashon Hara against the evil person, because he hasn't been rebuked. Maybe if you would have rebuked him properly, he wouldn't be evil. So you don't get the opportunity to define him as someone evil and therefore speak Lashon Hara against the evil. It's a mitzvah to speak Lashon Hara against the evil. It's a mitzvah to get rid of evil from your camp. You're a holy warrior. Not so easy to apply that.
That's easy to tell him and listen. You've warned him and rebuked him and he doesn't listen.
Exactly. It's only, and since almost by definition, it's very hard to rebuke somebody today. It's already 1,000 years. The rabbi said, I don't know if there's anybody that can rebuke properly today, and I don't know if anybody willing to receive rebuke properly. So essentially this level of hatred or speaking Lashon Hara against the evil or punishing the evil, all this is pretty much, it's an ideal halacha. It's halachas on the books to teach us the principle. The principle is true. Somebody's evil. We should be fighting against the evil. We should try to be fixing society. But how to implement that, to practice it, don't try this at home, folks. This could get you in trouble, and perhaps you'd be guilty, you'd be feel very, very holy, but many times you're just pushing people further away. It has to be very, very purely motivated. It's like the discussion It's like the discussion we just had last week, Parsha about Pinchas, about the Nekama, vengeance. There's a lot of discussion going on. There were some Jews who took the matter into their own hands, and they burnt some houses of some Arab village after Arabs killed some Jews. The Jews, they didn't kill anybody, Baruch Hashem. But the idea was vengeance. Vengeance is a good thing. Vengeance is a bad thing. It's a complicated matter. But one of the things which is clear in our Jewish sources is that even, let's say, there is a place for vengeance, which don't get any ideas, don't try this at home, just like I'm saying about this, and the sources, mainly vengeance is by God or by the Beit Din, who are the agents, to apply, to make sure that there's justice in society. But even when there is some allowance for this emotion of vengeance, it has to be purely motivated. You have to make sure inside you, you're not getting any feeling good because you're putting down the other guy. You're just fighting purely for the value of righteousness. And who here can be so sure that they're not finding any satisfaction when they're doing such a thing like hating or taking out vengeance or speaking Lashon Hara? I'm definitely not such a holy individual that is above it, so much above it that I'm not getting any personal pleasure or any feeling satisfaction. So it's important that it's on the books. Lashon Hara against the evil, speaking against evil, even vengeance against the evil. It's important that it's there because it teaches us the value. The evil has to be fought. We have to know what's good and what's evil. There's good and evil in the world, and ideally, we were trying to reach a society where all of society will together want to uproot the evil, and then the Beit Din could do it on their behalf, and hopefully, we'll be such holy individuals that we won't be doing it for the wrong reasons. We won't have the mixed motivations, which are dangerous. But so with that, I think about 10 halachot, we've covered the Rambam's discussion of hatred. We could go on. There's books written about hatred, but the concepts, the basic concepts, are here. Before that, he spoke about love. Then he spoke about hatred. Right? When he spoke about love, he said also there's a double mitzvah to love a convert. Remember that? The next one, which we're going to continue next time, is showing love, especially for orphans and widows. A person is obligated, I'll just read it, last line. A person is obligated to show great care for orphans and widows because their spirits are very low and their feelings are depressed. This applies even if they're wealthy. What? Orphans and widows, usually those are the people that don't have money. You have to take care of them. A widow can't make money on her own because her husband died, so you got to take care of them. Children, of course, they're penniless. So no, it's not about riches. It's about their spirits are low because of their social standing, because of their experiences, because maybe they're sad because their relative died. This applies even if they're wealthy. We are commanded to show this attention even to a king's widow and his orphans. He's the prince. He still has the status of an orphan. As is implied by Exodus 22:21, do not mistreat any widow or orphan. So Hashem, the next side, you don't have it, but I have it. I have it here. This is the beginning. Chapter 6 continues, but it's on the next page, so we'll do that. But Hashem, next week, and I'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m. Alex, you're coming on the Tiyul?
Yes, I'm coming directly to the...
I see. Right, because you're up from the north anyways. Amazing. Great. Terrific. Sounds good. Eof? We're all waiting for you. Tomorrow at 7 a.m. Okay. Gabi, you coming? Perfect.